Hello, hello, everyone. We have a pretty packed house today, some great professionals. We're going to give 2 minutes for everyone to jump in, and then we're just going to go straight into the sessions. Marlon, how's it going, buddy? So if you guys don't know, Marlon is, the most popular person on LinkedIn right now with her YouTube channel. So maybe you want to connect with her now before, she signs a deal with a big management agency and you can't get a hold of her anymore. Ash, thanks so much. So Ash is at work, so she can't really help us while she's working, but thanks for tuning in. We do have Stephanie Velasquez, who is taking over Ash's duties. She's going to man the chat. She's going to make sure everything goes off without a hitch. And then in 2 seconds, I'll introduce you to your panelists, who will then introduce themselves, and then we're going to just jump completely into it and try and give as much value as we can over the next hour. Feel free to throw in the chat. I'm seeing a lot of different names I recognize from a lot of different countries. So feel free to put in the chat your name, where you're from, because we definitely want to shout you out and make sure that we see all these beautiful international people and places. Just going to keep this up here so I can continue to let people in.
Wow, someone from Kenya. Look at that.
Oh, we have a strong Kenyan following. We're actually partnered with an organization, Due Diligence Advisory Africa. They've actually gone through our Chainalysis training. So Dennis, who's on the call, is one of the lead people there. So him and his team always bring some heavy representation, and we love it. All right, we're going to get started. Gretchen, why don't you get us started with who you are, what you do, and maybe a fun fact about you since you love comedy.
Yeah, so welcome everyone. Thanks so much for joining us. I'm on the executive search team from Hamyln Williams, so I typically hire C-suite, sometimes a level below level individuals within the Fintech, crypto, and Web3 space. We've done probably about 55 C-suite placements so far in the past year or so, everything from pre-seed through to IPO firms. I work quite often. You could always see me on LinkedIn, but when I'm not working, I can be found DJing. Just got into that.
All right, what's your set?
Yeah.
What do you say? EDM, some house music? I see Kayla laughing. It sounds like Kayla's into music too.
Some house, some techno, general EDM. I haven't started making my own mixes yet, but I just started a couple months ago, so I started doing the transition work and stuff. So.
All right, I need some new car music for my trip, so I'm gonna hit you up, and maybe you can make a little soundtrack for our events.
SoundCloud. I'll get on it.
Awesome. Elizabeth, tell us a little bit about yourself and maybe one fun fact about you.
Hey guys, nice to meet you all. Thank you, Steven, for having me. I'm a former Krakenite, former Crypto.com. I hate to say former. And I've been working for the last 6 months for a DAO, so mostly in the Web3 tech recruitment and in the Kraken and Crypto.com in compliance and operation. In Kraken, we have been hiring almost 80 plus people in 6-7 months. We have built from scratch many teams. Crypto.com, I had the pleasure to creating from scratch executive team. So my passion is mostly crypto, Web3, and that's why I love the space and I'm in this space.
Awesome. That's amazing. Lama, we had the actual pleasure of spending like 4 days together at a beautiful mastermind, just realizing it was just before the pandemic. So like 2 months before, we weren't able to see anyone for like 2 years. So tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, so hi everyone. My name is Lama. I'm joining you here from Burlington, Ontario, where it's also very cold. I'm seeing a lot of people in the chat saying that. I'm joining to help you with the career angle of all of this. I myself I'm currently a career coach. I run a coaching and consulting practice geared towards talent development. But my fun fact is, 10 years ago, I only ever dreamed of daydreamed of kind of saying, I wish I could have like a part-time job that I love, but then also be able to, have the flexibility to do whatever else I want, for the rest of the week. And I've manifested that into exactly that. This is what I'm doing right now. I'm working part-time with a company on talent development, and then doing my coaching and consulting for the rest. So all career dreams are also possible. And hopefully I can share that with you guys today.
Awesome. Thanks so much. And Stephanie, you're our resident helper today. You really took initiative to help volunteer. Why don't you tell the people who you are? Give us 1 minute of who you are and what you do.
Sure. My name is Stephanie. I'm an ex-consultant with Coinbase, Uphold, JP Morgan Chase, and their compliance teams. And yeah, I'm from the Hudson Valley, and I'm glad to be here.
Awesome. Let's jump right into it. I just messaged Ash to see if she's able to chat, because we always like to give Ash her props. She's always helping us out. Stephanie, thanks for sitting in and helping us out today. Gretchen, the first question is going to be, Ash, are you available to chat?
Sure. Hi, everyone.
Let us know who you are, buddy.
Hi, I work for a Toronto-based DeFi firm as an AML consultant, and I've been working in this space for more than 2 years. I'm really, really passionate about training, and I try to help Steven with his training projects, and I'd love to connect with people who are interested in training and crypto compliance specifically. Thank you.
Awesome. And she's kind of lying. She doesn't try to help me. She actually helps me. So I don't think we could run those sessions without Ash being there. Gretchen, we're starting off hot. I was just speaking to a recruiter actually just before we got in this session. That's why I was like struggling to wolf down some food before we started. But one of the big hits on recruiters, and one of the things that candidates say, is that they're not getting feedback. Now, we know there are some privacy things that recruiters have to be worried about when giving feedback to the candidates, but tell us why, or what reason why recruiters can't give maybe more transparent feedback about someone's performance, because I think that's what everyone wants to know from a recruiter.
Well, I think a couple things. I think it depends on recruiter to recruiter. I myself am quite brutally honest. So I'll just tell someone they didn't think that you were right for the role because of X, Y, Z. However, some recruiters kind of might take the route of, the candidate, they wanted to go in another direction, meaning they went with another candidate who might have more of X, Y, Z skill sets, or, they are going to source for the role internally, which sometimes happens, So there's a lot of different reasons. I think the other part about maybe the lack of feedback might be that the recruiter is simply busy. I mean, to be honest with you, a lot of times if I have calls stacked from 9 a.m. until 6 p.m., like my first priority is not letting someone know that, hey, just letting you know you didn't get the job. I might push it back a day or so for when I have time to do so, if my calls aren't stacked back to back to back to back. But either way, a recruiter should get back to you regardless of if you get a job or not, no matter what stage you're in my opinion. So busyness, I think it depends on the recruiter when it comes to the client being honest and whatnot. And then the last part that I wanted to mention is that sometimes there's poor communication from the client as well, right? I mean, hiring is a priority, but oftentimes if it's not an urgent role, sometimes it's not the first priority for a client to get back saying, hey, we want more profiles, or we want to see more of this person. And so sometimes there's a little bit of lack of communication from the client as well. And so that can also result in some poor feedback or delayed feedback.
I love that last point, because I think people forget, right? Like you still have to chase the companies that are looking to hire too. So sometimes you can't be transparent because you really don't know what's going on any more than the candidate does. Elizabeth, why don't you tell us that you've been a recruiter at different places? What are some of the challenges that you see? You've worked at several different companies, crypto, in the bear market that we're in right now, especially in crypto. What are candidates doing well versus, maybe what they were doing in a bull market? Give us kind of a perspective of both the markets and what you're seeing from candidates on both sides.
Sure. So in general, I guess that during the bull market, candidates are not always very passionate about crypto, but they are just following a trend. Sometimes I got in interviews where people were talking to me like if we were talking about a fashion trend rather than a passion and new industry, something that is going to change and shape the the future of our financial system. This is something that in general, me personally and hiring manager don't appreciate. So let's say this is the aspect that I will say it's very bad when a candidate wants to get into the Web3 and doesn't do his proper researches, doesn't show enthusiasm and somehow even passion for Web3 and crypto. On the other side, I got into interviews with candidates that were instead on the opposite, super passionate about it. They were living for crypto. They were early investors. They knew more than me in a while about Web3. This is something that I much appreciate. And regarding compliance professional, I got to know many, many people that even though weren't already in the crypto space, but were trying to get into getting certification. So for example, chain analysis certification that you guys can talk more in detail with Steven about, any kind of courses that was related to crypto, Bitcoin, how to investigate on the blockchain and so on. This is something that even though you don't have the real experience in crypto, a recruiter much appreciate and see your enthusiasm and passion for.
Awesome. And first of all, I want to say how many people are on camera. That's amazing. Nadenza, I remember you last session was one of the few. You and Michael were like the only ones on camera. So I love people are taking the advice we're giving, showing up on camera. I love it. Lama, talk to us because, you know, there's a lot of professionals, even on this call, they're hit by the layoffs. They're going up against other candidates that have, I would say, similar to maybe exact skill sets and work experience. They're all coming from similar organizations that did mass layoffs. How do candidates stand out? And maybe give us a couple of tips or strategies on how you work around the traditional HR or even recruitment process.
Yeah. So I'm going to actually start answering that question by asking everyone to think of someone they know who does stand out. And when you think about that, you'll find that that person, and common to every other person that does stand out that you know, is they are walking, talking, and actually acting in complete confidence, right? And confidence and courage and conviction in what they're believing in and what they're doing, and their skills. So first step for you to start doing that is really self-awareness. Become very, very intimate and aware with what are your strengths, and what are you can be aware of your development needs, but you don't need to focus on them. Be very aware of your strengths and what you bring. So, and creating your I help value statement. What is it that you help with? What is it that you do a little bit better than anybody else? It doesn't have to be than anybody else, but better than most people. So being very, very self-aware of exactly your skills and values and your experiences will actually grow that confidence, and it will allow you to start doing and walking, talking in the same way that those other people that you know that stand out. And I'm going to give you a little secret: fake it till you make it kind of works sometimes. So you don't have to be 100% there and 100% ready to actually do and say those things. Start saying them, and then they will come. So do it just before you're ready, and it'll be fine.
That's awesome. I think one thing we see, especially when you get to a level or in those boardrooms, is that everyone's still trying to figure it out the same way you are. And a lot of the people you see that get these jobs are just people that took a little bit more action and just kind of put their hand up. I want to stay with you, and then I'm going to go to Elizabeth, though. As a woman, what we've noticed, and I don't have the stats to back this up, I think the women on the call may confirm this, is that they may have a little bit more of an imposter syndrome than, let's say, a man. You know, I feel like men will apply to every role, and I hate using generics and even genders, but I feel like sometimes they'll apply even though they're not ready. They have that confidence, whereas women see a job description and they see roles and responsibilities like, I haven't done that. And I've even seen companies change the way that job descriptions are laid out, saying that in a year, this is what we really expect to succeed, to actually draw in more women applicants, because then they won't feel so pressured, or they won't feel like they can't reach that day one. Tell me a little bit, as a woman and as someone that's worked with a lot of women in career coaching, how can they maybe be more confident in those situations?
Absolutely. So just to make it the simplest form, apples to apples, when men and women apply to jobs, men will only apply when they have maybe just over 50%. Women feel like they need to have 90, 95%, if not 100 to apply. And the reality is HR wise, you only really need about 60%, between 50 to 60%, because the rest of it is exactly like you say, it's what we're expecting for the person to grow into within that 1 year. I know that not 100% of companies are like that, but that's the majority of the companies. And apples to apples, again, if the skills are exactly the same from the man and the woman, why wouldn't the woman apply? Right? You're just equally as talented, if not more. So I would say, to make it in the simplest forms, really keep in mind that I only really need to have 50 to 60% of what's on the job description to actually apply, and then just do it. Right? Just do
Awesome.
it. There's other people that are applying that have less than you, I promise.
Steven, can I add something in?
Yeah, you're good. I saw you go off mute. I'm like, I forgot that you're a veteran at these things. I don't have to cue you in or segue to you. Jump in there and talk.
Yeah, no, but one thing that I've seen significantly more in women candidates than men candidates is women, and I feel that it kind of goes hand in hand with imposter syndrome, is women lowballing themselves when it comes to comp significantly. Like, maybe not the amount that they're lowballing themselves, but the number of women lowballing themselves is significantly more than men. And so, you know, and we're going to discuss comp a little bit later, I think, in a couple more questions, and happy to add more then. But obviously, you know, give a range, but aim higher than what you would expect. Not ridiculously higher, but slightly higher. And it's just like kind of mind-boggling as a recruiter to see the amount of women who lowball themselves unprecedentedly when speaking to me.
Awesome. I appreciate that. And I know, as I said, I may not have been exactly, you know, I don't like to use gender because I'm not sure if I'm saying things right, but this is an open conversation. So feel free to send me a message if, you know, you don't feel like I identify with you, or I don't want to be canceled because I'm not doing right. But I think the women on the call can appreciate that the topic of conversation is very important. Elizabeth, we'll jump right into the compensation, actually talking to you, because I remember you actually interviewed me for a role, or we were just communicating about a role, and I went really high. I didn't even care. Talk to us a little bit about that compensation piece. What are you seeing, both as now that you're trying to find a job, and we'll get into that a little later, and from a recruitment side, where are people going wrong with compensation? Are they just so focused on salary? Is there any other creative things that you've seen in the industry, especially in crypto, whether it be equity or growth plans or a budget for certifications that you're seeing where people can get a little bit more creative instead of just worrying strictly about salary?
Let's make aware the audience, first of all, that when you contacted me, you shot very high, like if we were on the moon. So, no, joke aside, you deserve that. To be honest with you, I truly believe that this compensation piece is always a taboo. So people don't want to speak about compensation. On the other side, company don't want to disclose the compensation. Sometimes the recruiter cannot disclose the compensation. And on the other side, the candidates are afraid of telling openly their expectation because they believe that probably the recruiter can just close the call and say bye. From my perspective, but I'm talking just about my personal perspective, I truly believe that any candidate, we are talking about any gender, any nationality, should ask for what he deserves according to the certification, according to the year of experience, according to the work that needs to be done. It's obvious that if the recruiter gets the sense from the candidate that the candidate is very arrogant, that is asking for something that is completely out of his range, that is asking for something that is not fair, it's obvious that the interview will not end well. But if the candidate is asking fairly in a humble way what deserve, I think that it's pretty much one of the first right of the candidate to ask for. On top of that, I will say, as a candidate myself in many situations, it's even good to ask to the company what's the type of budget that they have, if they can disclose it, because of course, as I mentioned, in many companies where I work with, I couldn't disclose the salary. That was a bit somehow frustrating from my side because I couldn't really guide well the candidate. But I truly believe that it's a prerogative and right of the candidate to express its own need and its own expectation, and to be somehow able to negotiate in case the company is of interest. In terms of what the company did, let's say, to meet the candidate in the middle, I saw many companies, like, for example, Kraken, giving crazy, amazing benefits. For example, unlimited PTO, home office allowance to set up your own home office. It's amazing. Not so many companies do this. To allow people to work fully remote, so to give the possibility to anyone in the world to contribute to the company. I truly believe that some benefits like this could somehow compensate a bit lower basic salary.
Awesome. We have some people in the chat saying the audio is choppy. It sounds good for me, but if anyone has this, feel free to send a direct message to me. Sounds good. Lama, we're going to go to you. And then I think Gretchen's dying to close this session. So talk about compensation. So Lama, you're working with candidates, you're preparing them for these interviews. Can you give us some maybe creative ways that they can think about compensation versus just being annual salary?
Can you repeat that question again?
Is there any way you could give them more creative ways of, looking at compensation versus just the salary portion of compensation, whether it's remote working, the ability to work remotely, whether it's other, perks that they can add? How do you approach that for candidates that you work with?
Yeah, so definitely I put my HR hat on to answer that question, because it's the job, the whole value of the job. So it's not, the value of the job is not just the money and the vacation time. It's the value of the company. What's the value of the experience? Where's my kind of projection? How far can I go within the company? And comparing that to other roles and other companies that you might be looking at. So when you look at the job holistically, that's where you can kind of make the distinction between what is it that I can actually ask for a little bit more? Do I ask for a sign-on bonus or not? Do I ask for all these kind of, again, more PTO, more whatever, to kind of put the right combination together? And also, how much do you really want that job? If you only want it kind of, then you don't need to kind of go all the way. If you really want it, you'll really do everything that you can to make it work.
Awesome. Gretchen, finish us off here. And I think that's a great point of how much do you really want a job and what's the number you're willing to walk away from? I think that's what people struggle with. They're so desperate for the job that they're not really to put that walk away amount. Gretchen, anything to add?
Oh yeah, this is my favorite topic. Talking about compensation is my favorite topic. When going into the fintech or crypto space, one question that I think it's absolutely imperative to ask people is, what is your risk appetite? Not only in terms of the job itself, but are you someone who prefers higher base plus more cash up front and less equity? Or are you someone who's willing to take an average, maybe even slightly below pay cut and more equity, right? I mean, I'm young, I don't feel young, but I'd like to think that I'm young. And so I might be someone, I don't have a mortgage, I might be someone who is more inclined to take on equity and less cash up front, which is totally fine. But to someone who has kids and a mortgage, they might want more cash up front. And so I would encourage them to kind of really determine their own risk appetite when thinking about that overall compensation package. I think the other components there are of course, yes, the benefits, totally get it, but the vesting schedule of that equity. Okay, so say that there's a 1-year cliff and then it vests at quarterly over the course of 4 years. Okay, are you expecting to stay in that role for 5 years in order to get all of your equity, right? There's different components that I think people need to think of when throwing out a compensation range. And when I say range, I mean a legit range, right? I would much rather have someone in my LinkedIn DMs message me back and say, I wouldn't accept a role that's anywhere below 250 on the base. Great, cool. Being upfront and giving an honest range. Like, I was talking to someone the other day and I was like, oh, the range for this role is 250 to 300. And they're like, okay, that's okay. And I'm like, well, no, like, is 250 okay? If they came with an offer for 250, is that something you would accept on, yes or no? And he's like, no. And I'm like, okay, so what is an honest range here? Anything below 260, 270? Like, let's get a little specific. So really, 1, determining your risk appetite, 2, determining your threshold in terms of cash that you would be looking for.
I think that's great. I think a lot of people go into these conversations, as soon as the subject of money comes up, they freeze, right? They don't even know what that range is. They don't know what their walkaway amount is. Like I always say, take the lowest, add 20,000, 30,000, and that's your range and go with it from there. But that, and you raise a good point. I think we'll talk a little bit more about it later on, is that conversation around mortgages and obligations. But Crystal, you want to jump in with a question, and feel free to show your baby because we love seeing babies on these calls.
Oh, he's putting a hand. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Jojo. You know, I love what everybody's saying, and I think it was Elizabeth who had hit on, you know, if somebody comes in arrogant and asks for a certain amount of money, it's going to turn people off. But if they are aligned to and deserving of that, it makes perfect sense. And Gretchen mentioned the ranges. So I just wanted to ask, right? Even though it's better to be upfront about your expectations, if there's a range and you're within range, is it best to hold off on expressing where in that range your expectation is until after you've wowed them in the interviews and they see all of the brilliance you bring and they're more open to potentially like going towards that side of the range? Or do you just say it up front?
So I would like to respond to this question. I think that your idea is a good idea. So during an interview, to give a range and to not give an exact amount will give you the possibility later on to show your value during the interview process. And then to let the interviewer understand that maybe you are much more worth it than your lower, let's say, range. So I truly believe that to give a range, it's much more worth it than giving just an amount. That's my idea, at least. I don't know, Gretchen and Lema.
Lema, you want to add to that? And then Gretchen? No?
I
Gretchen?
agree. Yeah.
I think Elisabetta pretty much covered it. I think I personally am quite upfront. So let's say your range is within the range that they gave. I would say your range up front. Range meaning, you know, within 20 or 30K of what you would be looking for, so that it leaves you room to negotiate.
Awesome. And Crystal Noah is the author of an amazing book coming out on sanctions. Our friend Stephanie is going to pull up her post since she has the baby in her hands. Or if you have access, throw the link in the chat and let's all pre-order. Go find that sanctions book. It does talk about virtual assets. And to be quite honest, all the conversations and everyone in virtual assets and cryptocurrency is hiring for sanctions related roles right now. So it would be great to go pre-buy that book. And she's an amazing author and professional. Elisabetta, let's go back to you. You know, you've worked as a recruiter, but you've been in a couple situations in the last year where you had to be the candidate looking for a job. Tell us what are some of the pain points that you see that recruiters should know better that you're still seeing as a candidate versus being the actual recruiter. I think that'll help a lot of people on this call.
Steven, thank you so much for reminding me my painful situation. I'm joking. To be honest with you, I think that in general, to be laid off, it's very painful, it's awful. But for a recruiter, it's even worse because when you see that companies start laying off, it means that this company and many others will not gonna grow for some time. So you know that you will really struggle in the industry. To go back to compliance professional, to a professional at this stage in the crypto industry, to be honest, what I can tell you is from my side, I can connect myself to the topic that you and Gretchen were speaking about before, so to the ghosting topic. It's very bad when you speak with recruiters or hiring manager or other people involved in the process, and then these people try to ghost you or disappear. They don't give you an answer. They don't give you honest feedback. I truly believe that what Gretchen said before, it's the real truth. So it's better to be straightforward and honest, even though the truth is hard to get, but it's better to know rather than to be in a sort of limbo. And from the candidate perspective, I truly believe that it should be awful to be ghosted, to not get honest feedback. Also, you don't know what you have done wrong. If it's something that you have done wrong during the interview, If it's something that you were lacking, maybe you didn't have a certification, maybe you didn't have a proper experience, maybe you didn't have certain, I don't know, soft skills that they were asking for. If nobody gives you this type of feedback, you will never know, you will never improve, you will never grow, and you will never do something better in the next interview or with the next company. So what I would say as a recruiter and a candidate, from these sides, both sides, I would say no ghosting, honest feedback, and when possible, a feedback that would be constructive for the candidate. That's what I would suggest to the recruiters worldwide to do.
I love it. And we're going to go deep into this, into different questions, but I'm going to go to the first question of, you mentioned, did you do awful in the interview? Gretchen, what are some deal breakers in the interview process? This is what people want to know. They're out before the interview's even done. What are the people doing that are just completely deal breakers for you, that you see in hiring for your positions?
Yeah, some deal breakers for me. If the person is absolutely obsessed about compensation, not saying that you shouldn't talk about it, but if that is all the person is concerned about, then, that kind of raises a red flag in my head that, okay, they're not really interested in the role. They're really interested in more compensation at the end of the day, which everyone has their own ultimatums, and that's fine. But, that's kind of a red flag to me that, okay, what if I place this person and then another company comes by and offers them more comp, then they're going to jump again. I think another red flag, to me, it's fine to talk about this stuff, but on an interview, it's not. When people are talking bad about their past employer, talking as if even if you did have the worst manager in the world, even if you didn't take any time off, there's other ways that you can express this other than saying just that. You can say, I didn't think the company culture was a good fit from a management perspective, or, not giving very specific examples, but still kind of alluding to the fact as to why your past employer was maybe not the right fit. That's another thing you can say, is just saying it wasn't the right fit. But those two are not only deal breakers to me, but deal breakers to the client as well.
Awesome. Lama, take us home on this subject, because you're working in HR departments, you have colleagues that are recruiters. What are some things that leave a bad taste in their mouth at the end of an interview?
I think, yeah, absolutely. I totally echo everything that Gretchen just said. Saying bad things about your previous employer is just not going to help anyone. Really be thoughtful about it. Just be thoughtful about what it is that you're actually sharing, and really be aware of kind of how much you're preparing, right? How much you're bringing across. And interviews I always tell people, interviews are not about you. They're about the person that's interviewing you. So be mindful of what it is that they're looking for. Yes, of course, you're going to get the job, but you're going to fill that need. So just make sure that it's kind of a two-way thing too. It's not just you getting the job, it's them filling a need.
How long are you telling people to prepare for a single interview? Because, we had some professionals on here 2 weeks ago that talked about 30 hours of research. When we give advice to professionals, we say 8 to 10 hours of research. And, that could be easy as listening to a podcast when you walk or doing the dishes. But we figure that, for every hour of research, that adds on another $1,000 in potential compensation. At least that's the numbers we're making up. What are your thoughts on preparation?
I never put it in a number of hours, but I put it in exactly what to do. And I am very picky about be over prepared for an interview, because interviews is not the time to be unprepared. And it encompasses self-awareness, being really, really aware of all of your strengths and all of your development needs, being very prepared about the job description and what you can offer into every single thing that's in the job description, and then being able to provide the best examples and answers towards replying to kind of each one of these, right? It's not just any old example that comes to your mind. You should practice ahead of time. What are the best examples that I have that match these and that will address the need that is that's there? So if you kind of do those, then you're there an A to Z preparation.
And we're going to go to the rest of the panelists, but one last thing is I find that people or candidates have terrible questions, right? They give an opportunity to show off that research that you just talked about. Question time comes around and they're asking how many days off did they get? And I'm not exaggerating. That's what a lot of you candidates are asking. Silly questions. This is where what advice can you give to someone that's preparing for late stage interviews, early interviews when it comes to that question period? That was for you, Lama, and then we're going to go to Elizabeth and Gretchen.
Okay,
yeah,
I'm going to say something that might be a little bit bold, but I'll give the recruiters a veto if they want to scratch that. I like to ask questions that will help me get directly to kind of address what it is exactly the person that's asking me the question wants. So if I'm talking to a hiring manager, I will ask the first question I'll ask when they say, do you have any questions, is what describes to you the best person that will fit the need that you want? And they'll tell you 1, 2, 3. I need someone who's going to be, tenacious, who's going to be taking things across the finish line. And then I will use that question to return back to them and say, oh, well, you know what? It happens to be that when in my job of blah, 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 I did this, to actually demonstrate exactly what that hiring manager just asked is the perfect thing for them. And then that way you're kind of feeding that answer exactly to them and making it kind of almost idiot proof, right? That it's, hey, here you are, I'm handing you myself on a platter for exactly what it is that you need.
That's awesome. It takes some preparation to kind of have already something built in. You have to have a quick turnaround time.
That's the self-awareness. That's this awareness and preparation part, right? Yeah.
Elizabeth, what are some of the, you've heard the questions that people are asking you when it's coming to the final stages. What's a good question? What are some good questions, or how should people prepare for these questions?
Sure. Sometimes I think that it's important for the candidate to ask questions about company values, how the environment is. I saw so many candidates going through the process asking, let's say, more technical question or asking about compensation, but not asking how the management style will be, how the team it is, how the vibe in the team is. I just think that sometimes we are human beings. We have to remember that we are human beings. And it's important to not be just focused on, okay, I have the skills so I can do the job and that's it. It's important even to understand if you yourself can be a good fit for that specific team, because sometimes, you don't want to walk in toxic environment. It's obvious that you cannot understand everything at first when you ask to the recruiter, but I think that you can get a bit of a taste when you start speaking to hiring managers. So I truly believe that good question that could be asked by the candidates to not have regrets, let's say in a later stage, are more related to how is the work environment, what is the style of management that the manager will have, how is the team vibe, are the member of the team collaborating or everything is more a standalone role? This is something very important. And some candidates really ask this question, and these are the candidates that will last longer in the company because they willingly chose to be in that environment and they understood that it was for them. So my advice is always to ask.
Awesome. I love that. Gretchen, what are some good questions that you're hearing, or what are some, at least how they're putting together the questions? And then B, maybe you could talk a little bit about what does culture fit mean to you as a recruiter?
Sure. Yes. So especially nearing the end of an interview, personally, I would recommend asking about future, right? End of an interview, meaning end of an interview process, right? You're in later stages, you're in the second to last or last round or what have you. And it's 2023, a lot of companies are not doing so hot. So personally, I would ask about, what is the strategy of the company looking like from a short, medium, and long-term perspective, and how do I fit into that as a candidate, right? What is the company's security looking like from a short, medium, long-term perspective might be a better way to word it. And then especially nearing towards the end, I think it would also be important to ask, at this point, do you have any reservations or concerns about my candidacy that I can, alleviate or confirm for you? What are your concerns about my candidacy that might hold me back from potentially getting this position? And really being kind of an attentive listener, and then being solutions oriented from there as to, whatever concerns they might have.
Awesome. Gretchen, before we go on to the next questions, everyone, if you have questions, please put them in the chat. We might get Stephanie to read them out loud. We don't know how we're going to do this. We might, or she might just send them to me. She might just send the best questions, but put them in the chat starting from now. Gretchen, how does somebody stand out or make your job easier as a recruiter, right? I think people don't know how to deal with recruiters, right? They think just keep on asking them every week if they have any jobs, and then tell the recruiters, message me if there's a job that fits my description. They do that to everyone, not just recruiters, everyone on LinkedIn. What are ways to approach a recruiter to make it more of a successful relationship versus like, hey, Gretchen, do you have any jobs this week? No. Okay, I'll ask you next week. Hey, Gretchen, it's been a week. Anything new? Like, what are ways that they can actually contribute to making your job easier to stay top of mind, but actually helping you and bringing value to you as a recruiter?
Yeah, well, first and foremost, I think a lot of people are not always comfortable when talking to a recruiter. I think they might, if they're happy with where they're at, that's completely fine. But people might feel like they're betraying their current company by talking to a recruiter. And it's like, no, you should be talking to recruiters. You should be building that relationship because 1, you never know what happens. 2, you want to hear what's going on in the market. And 3, you want to make sure that you're being paid market value, if not above. So I think it's always good to at least have the conversation. There's nothing wrong in having a conversation. Even if there's nothing that comes to fruition from it. So I think being proactive in your search by reaching out to recruiters and saying, hey, I'm open to a chat. I'm happy where I am, but I want to start building a relationship, because it is always good to have a good recruiter in your back pocket, and you can slowly determine yourself if the recruiter is good or not. But that's a whole nother discussion. That, and then I think, trying to remember the second part of your question, in order to, be a good candidate for a recruiter, I think it's important to have communication. If you're already working with a recruiter on a role, let the recruiter know, hey, just so you know, I got the invitation link. Hey, just so you know, the interview went really well, or the interview went really poorly. Keeping that line of communication open so that the recruiter can then determine what feedback to share with the client. And, if to alleviate any concerns that you might have, you might finish an interview and say, this actually really isn't for me, despite the comp being so high. Okay, that's fine. Tell the recruiter so that you're not wasting anyone else's time. Your time isn't being wasted, and that everyone's happy at the end of the day. If you don't hear back from a recruiter and you feel that you're getting ghosted, I would say follow up. Totally okay with following up. I appreciate when people follow up with me because it's impossible to get to every single message, and it definitely helps it stand out. And then finally, in terms of working with a recruiter, I even recommend to people, let's say someone has regulatory compliance but also AML experience, have 2 separate resumes. Honestly, why apply for an AML compliance job if your resume is all regulatory? And I understand shooting your shot. I'm totally for it. But at the same time, you could have both. It doesn't take a lot of time to tweak some things to make sure that it's accustomed to the job that you're applying to. Because those keywords, that AML, that anti-money laundering, KYC, CDD, EDD, what have you, it does stand out, and it does make a difference when we are searching for candidates and when we're reviewing resumes. So using a lot of keywords and even making 2 different resumes if it comes down to that.
That's some interesting advice. And all those acronyms that you're using is just like, it's soothing to all our AML and compliance professionals. You're talking sweet whispers into their ear. Elizabeth, I want to ask you.
Let me know.
Elizabeth, I actually want to ask you, and then we're going to go to Lama for her final thoughts. But I want to ask you, Elizabeth, if you're in the process with a candidate and then they take another job without notifying you, it's kind of last minute. Do you hold grudges as a recruiter? Do you remember that? I know I do, but I'm wondering if you do as a recruiter, because I think I'm just not your most orthodox recruiter. So do you hold grudges? Do you remember that the next time they may approach you? Because we saw a lot of that in crypto, right? At the start of last year, everyone just taking whatever job, not talking to the recruiter. And now they're dialing you up 3 months later saying, hey, 18% of layoffs, how can I help? How can you get me a job? What are your thoughts around that? Be truthful too. The audience needs to hear the truth.
Amazing. Honestly, now people are contacting me from all over the world. Before, when I was contacting them, they were ignoring me completely. No, I mean, Steven, you are very right asking this question. To be honest with you, I just think that sometimes the right opportunities come up and you cannot really control them. I don't think that a recruiter should be angry at the candidate that accepts another opportunity, even because could happen even to yourself as a recruiter to accept another offer while you are in the process with another company. I would say just be polite. So just as Gretchen was saying before, it's good to follow up with the recruiter, even if you are telling them, hey, I'm sorry, I'm declining your opportunity. I don't care. I accepted another offer. Okay. But tell me, at least I'm aware. Don't ghost me, because sometimes the candidates ghost recruiters as well. It's not always the other way around. So I just think that it's a matter of kindness. With kindness, everything can be done. Everything can be forgiven.
I love that. And, some people made some really great points in the chat. When you get into crypto compliance in crypto, the industry is so small and everyone's talking. You have to really be careful about pissing off the wrong company. A lot of people move. Me and Elizabeth have been on both sides. I've been looking for a job. She's been looking for a job. I've helped her with some of the recruitment stuff. She's helped me. She comes on to these sessions. You just never know what's going to happen. And that's all been in the span. I think we know each other for less than 6 months. So we can see how quickly the industry changes. Lama, last points to you. What are some of the things that you're telling as a career coach? Give us a little bit of freebie. Give us some freebie stuff as a career coach, some of that good stuff that you charge people for, rightfully so, because you're one of the best career coaches in North America. Give us some juice that you could give these people that they can implement as soon as they leave this session.
Yeah. Think very carefully about what 99% of the population is also doing when it comes to finding a job, because that is really what is going to make a difference. If you really, really want that job, don't be complaining when you're just applying to jobs online and not hearing back, because again, 99% of everybody else is doing it. So come up with your very strategic and smart job search strategy, and use LinkedIn. LinkedIn is just, I feel like, invaluable these days. Use LinkedIn. Don't underestimate the power of being visible on there. People will remember your name if you are consistently visible, and they will come back to you, and you're gonna be the one in demand. They're gonna be asking you to come in and interview for stuff rather than you always being on the search. And obviously networking. People really do want to help each other. I promise they do. Not all of them, you won't hear from some of them. That's fine. There's more. And there is an abundance of job. I know again, this industry is kind of going through a thing, but there's an abundance of jobs in general. You'd be making a mistake to think that there's no job for me out there and there's a lack. There's an abundance of jobs. And when you kind of work on that mindset stuff, it'll all just come.
I love it. And I think take this time to be creative. We might go 10 minutes over. We do have some of the panelists that have to leave right at 1 o'clock Eastern time. We'll go a few minutes over to whoever wants to stick around. If you leave, that's perfectly okay. You'll get a recording of the part of the session that you missed. I just asked Marlon if she could place her YouTube channel in the chat, because I think this is one of the best things that anyone can do, whether you're looking for a job or not. To Lama's point, Marlon has created a career. Crystal, who's on this call, Michael's, who are on this call, one's an OSINT person, one is one of the best in cybersecurity, have all built themselves on LinkedIn as just being strong in one area or just being completely creative. And I just want everyone to take a look when Marlon can pop it in the YouTube channel, and just look when you use a little bit of creativity with a somewhat boring subject like compliance, and what you can do. And I think Marlon can put in the chat how that's dramatically changed the amount of people that have approached her, the connections she's made ever since doing this. And this is just something that she did within the last couple of months, based on a joke I made about creating a boat, or building a boat. Build anything or create anything. So final words before we go into the chat session. Gretchen, final words that you can leave these people with. Lama gave us some really great ending advice. Do you have anything else you want to add?
I'll keep it short and simple. Find a good recruiter, keyword good, build a relationship ahead of time, and be honest with them. if your expectation, be honest with your comp expectations, because oftentimes the more comp that we can get you, the more comp we bring home at the end of the day as well, in full transparency, right? So it's in your best interest to be honest as well. Find a good recruiter, be honest with them, build a relationship over the years, because relationships in recruitment should not be transactional. They should be like a friendship almost. But
what's a bad recruiter? Everyone's like, okay, how do I know a good recruiter from a bad recruiter? What's a bad recruiter?
A bad recruiter will often, well, first of all, they won't get back to you at all. They'll ghost you. A bad recruiter will beat around the bush or not really give you the fully transparent compensation range, or say, yeah, it's around this or it's around that. No, there's a range. Find out what it is. A bad recruiter will spill too much tea about other individuals or about other companies, oftentimes a little bit too much tea, or lie about the comp, as Anna said it in the chat. And I'm in New York and we have a pay transparency law, so I think that that's awesome on LinkedIn or any job sites that you're applying to, because you can now see exactly what the compensation range is.
Awesome. And one last advice for me. If you guys are getting LinkedIn messages with recruiters that aren't saying your name, they're giving very vague descriptions about the position, that's something that you should be looking out for. Because if you go running to respond to that and then they ghost you, well, is that the way that recruiter would approach the best in the industry? So you have to take some accountability yourself. If you're getting some flimsy message, looks like copy and paste, it looks automated because they're saying, hey, possible candidate versus your actual name, then you have to do your due diligence. Like, should I respond to this person? Should I even engage with them? Because if you do engage with them, then you have to understand that if that's the recruitment process, you can only imagine what the job is going to look like or who their client is. So that's a little piece of advice for you to responding. And I know how exciting it is when you don't have a job, the mortgage is due, and the kids want to be eating organic baby food. But that's something that you really have to think about. Elizabeth, final thoughts for these people, amazing professionals on this session. Then we'll go over some Q&A through the chat.
Guys, honestly, I'm in your same situation. So my advice is to keep going, don't give up, to continue to create your network, because your network sometimes can be very, very extremely valuable. You never know in the future what can happen. As Steven said, the space is very small. To be kind, to connect, as Gretchen said, to have a recruiter means not just a transaction, but to have a friend. So if you find a good recruiter that is willing to help you and to guide you, this is the best thing that you can have in the space. My advice is just don't give up. Continue to update your CV, to look at your CV and see how you can improve it, and continue to connect with valuable people in the space.
Elizabeth, be honest, when you lost your last position, did you think, or even the first time, did you think it was going to be a lot easier to find a job because you're such a good recruiter and because you have built a network? Did you think it was going to be a lot easier than it has been? Or did you think it was going to be harder?
Honestly,
be honest. We're here to give the honest truth about application life.
You know that I'm very honest. No, to be honest, I didn't think that it would have been easier. I thought just that the market is very tough at the moment, and I knew that it would be harder. That's why I'm saying, guys, don't think that it's just you or you or you. It's everyone in the same situation. It's just a matter of not giving up, of keep going, of continue to apply, creating your network, review your CV, and search companies, well-funded companies that raise funds, companies that are still hiring, and something will come up. I'm sure about that.
Awesome. Lama, I know you have to jump in 2 minutes. You have a very important call. I see a lot of questions about resume and cover letters. Give it for your last parting words. Talk a little bit about cover letters and resumes and what people shouldn't be doing or should be doing when it comes to those things.
Yeah. And again, there's recruiters on here, so they can speak to this much better than I can. For resumes, I always say most important information has to be at the top. Grab their attention, and then they will keep reading. Use, bold and italics and so keeping it simple, but use these things to kind of direct people's eyes to where you want them to look for the most important pieces of information. Cover letters, I haven't been in companies for a long time, but I honestly, even when I was HR for a very, very long time, I really can't remember the last time I read a cover letter. I'm curious to hear from Gretchen and Elizabeth on if they read cover letters too. I mean, it's nice to have your wording ready and know the format of it, but do hiring managers really, go through the whole thing and read a cover letter? My opinion, I don't know. I don't think so.
Thank you so much, Lem. I know you have to jump. Thank you so much for being on this panel. We hope to have you and your expertise back. And we're actually working on creating some fun workshops for people. So hopefully we get a lot of traction here. Gretchen, before we go to questions, as a recruiter, I never read the full resume. So let's be honest here. Are you reading the full resume, or are you just looking for certain bullet points that should capture your attention if they're applying for a specific role?
I'm personally skimming over the full resume.
Skimming.
I take a lot of pride in my work, and if I have reservations or second doubts about people, I probably won't submit them for a role. And so I definitely want to make sure that I don't have reservations before I send to a client. So I personally read the full resume. In terms of the cover letter, I do not read the cover letters, nor do a lot of my clients ask for cover letters, to be completely honest with you.
Awesome. Just typing in the chat. Nobody cares about you were the best cashier 5 years ago. Talk about relevant experience in your resume, because I think people get caught up with putting all their work experience versus putting the most important work experience. So we're going to go through the questions. If you've asked a question in the chat, feel free to put your hand up. It'll probably be easier for you to read out your own questions. We'll probably go about 15 minutes over. If you've been to any of my sessions, I always go over. So don't pretend like this was only going to last for 1 hour. We both know that wasn't true, but we just want to make sure those that had a specific lunch hour were able to join for 1 hour. So Stephanie, why don't you lead us off with one of the questions that you found interesting? I know I'm putting you on the spot, and then we'll let people jump off the mic and ask their questions, if anything.
Sure. I like Christina's question. What are some of the things we should watch out for with the recruiting scams on LinkedIn?
Ooh, good one. Gretchen and Elizabeth, you probably see a lot of this working in the crypto space. Elizabeth, why don't you start us off, and then Gretchen can add her thoughts, and I'll add in mine.
Yeah, to be honest, I read many posts on LinkedIn about recruiting scam. I was very surprised, honestly, such crazy ideas people have. To be honest, I think that you should always check the profile of the person that is contacting you, and even trying to understand, for example, how many connections this recruiter has in the space or in general on LinkedIn. I saw many, so recruiting in tech is very sometimes fishy. I had some crazy experiences with developers that were in reality fake developers, were more hackers. And I discovered that because they had, 4 connections, maybe 3 connections on LinkedIn. And then I did my own due diligence and I discovered that. Same thing is for potential recruiters that are connecting with you. I would say always check on the experience. If it's let's say a reputable experience, or if it's a bit of a fake thing. And on top of that, even the connection that this person could have. This will lead you to understand if this person is very well versed and very well connected in the space, if it can be real or fake. This is my advice.
I love it. Gretchen and Elizabeth, one thing I struggle with is that a lot of these scammer ways of recruiting is kind of how the crypto people recruit traditionally anyway. So it's hard to stop. It's hard to identify a scam versus a crypto startup that's just moving really quick and trying to onboard really quickly. Gretchen, do you see some differences, or have you heard of some scams or people that have come to you and said, hey, I got a job offer from you, I'm excited, and you're like, hold on, I never sent you anything, kind of thing?
It is hard to differentiate a lot of times for the average person. I recommend, it's not uncommon, or I would recommend maybe even talking to another recruiter, hey, I got approached by this company. What do you know about them? And of course, what Elizabeth said, just piggybacking off of her, looking at the actual profile of the person who sent you the message and referred you to the job in the first place. Excuse me. And I think also doing your due diligence on the company itself. How long has it been in existence? Is there a contact phone number? Is there a contact email for help or customer support? Do they have funding? Look on Crunchbase, look on other funding websites, just to help justify if this company is legitimate or not. Those would be my recommendations.
Awesome. And more, the more research, the better. You still could get it wrong, right? Everyone that's working at FTX is like, fuck, I did all that and I still ended up with no job. So you can still get it wrong. So you don't have to feel bad, even if you do get it wrong, as we've all gotten it wrong at some point. You feel bad for those people that got job offers from legitimate companies, and before they even started, they got that email saying, hey, you know what? This has been revoked or whatnot. Stephanie, give us another banger question here as we're going into overtime at the webinar.
There was one about the LinkedIn recommendations. Like, what does it mean to a recruiter? Does it mean much?
Good question. Gretchen, first of all, are you looking at people's LinkedIn? Like, as a recruiter, that's the first place I think many recruiters find people that have the relevant skills, because you can use that search tool, which is very powerful on LinkedIn. Are you using LinkedIn actively? Do you look at a person's activity versus just their profile? Are you seeing what they're doing in the industry? I'd love to hear both your thoughts. We'll start with Gretchen on that one.
Yeah, LinkedIn, you're absolutely right. LinkedIn is a powerful tool. I use it paired with our database that we have every single day. And when I say every single day, I mean on the weekends as well. Yeah, unfortunately. Your LinkedIn profile matters. Do the recommendations at the bottom matter as much? I would say no. I want to see the content is there. If you haven't updated your LinkedIn profile for the past 5 years, I'd recommend to update it. Show the progression of, okay, you started as an analyst, now you're an associate, now you're a vice president, now you're a director, showing that vertical progression of your career within a company. And again, just kind of reiterating what I said, and this is the tell-all version, right? A lot of what we go off of as recruiters are those keywords, right? Maybe don't just put AML, but put anti-money laundering somewhere else on your profile. Put every single possibility of the different keywords that we could be using for the kinds of jobs that you're looking for. And you can look at a job spec and you'll see those keywords that I'm talking about, and making sure that they're on your profile as well, and that your profile is neat, clean, up to date. Bullet points is totally fine. The recommendations don't matter as much. If I needed a recommendation, I would ask for it, or the client would ask me for it.
Awesome. Elizabeth, are you looking at people's activity? One thing I noticed, you made a good point about the person's profile, is that if the profile doesn't look like their resume, that's always confusing for a recruiter, right? They have all these jobs in their resume, then you look at their profile and it's like they've been self-employed for 12 years. And you're like, well, do you actually work for this company? Is this a scam candidate? So I think people have to realize, like, make the recruiter's job easier, make everything at least flow. It doesn't have to look exactly like Elizabeth. Are you diving into people's LinkedIn to see if they're active, like with Marlon and her amazing, or Crystal and her book, or Marlon and her YouTube channel? Would that stand out to you as a recruiter? I'm always interested. And you can be honest, Marlon's not looking for a job, so she won't take it personally.
I fully agree with Gretchen on every point. First of all, I don't look at the recommendation, just because many people could be shy. They don't ask for recommendation. Many other people don't think that a recommendation could be useful, and instead maybe are amazing candidates. So recommendation don't say anything on LinkedIn. What I would say, Stephen, I agree with you on the fact that it's very confusing when on a CV is written, I don't know, 12 years of experience in this and that. And then on LinkedIn, you find just, I don't know, 2 years, 3 years, or the other way around. It can be a bit fishy, scammy. So I would say always try to match as much as possible your LinkedIn profile and your CV, because this means that somehow makes sense. There is a logic behind. And on the other side, what Gretchen said before about, keywords, you guys have to know that when a recruiter searches for candidates, they search for specific keywords. We have a system on LinkedIn Recruiter that help us to identify through an algorithm some keywords and some, I don't know, specific location, years of experience, depending on the role. So it's obvious that if you put a lot of details, the recruiter would have much more potential to find you and to find the right profile for that job. But if you just write the job title, you don't write anything below, you don't let's say, explain what exactly is your role about, what type of duties you are carrying out. This doesn't make the recruiter job easier, and somehow doesn't make your possibility, your chances higher to be hunted. So, to be honest, I fully agree with both of you. I just think that candidates should be cunning in the staff market and to add as many details as possible to help recruiters to find you, and to hire you.
And that's good advice. Michael, you're the OSINT person, getting in some of those stuff that you're doing on OSINT. Right now, you're a consultant. Whether you're working with another company, you're always your own personal brand. You're always a consultant. Whether you have a client or not is a totally different story. So putting in some of the projects that you're working on, some of the initiatives that you're working on, pictures, visuals, in that page, I think is really helpful to kind of like establish your brand, especially someone like yourself that's very powerful in OSINT. Gretchen, quick question. Salary ranges for a AML crypto role, maybe medium level to senior experience. Throw out some numbers. You've hired some, maybe a little bit less than like a CCO, maybe senior manager in like AML or even crypto compliance regulation. Throw out some numbers that would make the people feel, and are those numbers different now than they were 8 months ago? Are companies lowering their ranges because they know that the market has to take what they can get? That's always interesting to know as well.
This is a tough question to ask because honestly, it depends on the stage of the company itself. If you go to a Series A, you have to be prepared to take possibly less cash than you would at a Series D. So it's kind of a difficult question to ask to answer. Excuse me. I think in terms of mid to senior level. Mid-level compliance positions, I think you can go anywhere from, let's say a team lead would be somewhere from 130 to 150. And let's discuss this as if the roles were fully remote, right? Because, typically if a company is based in, I don't know, Idaho versus New York, you're going to find a significant salary difference between those two places. So we'll go as if the companies are fully remote. I think for a mid-level position, I think you can go anywhere from 130, 140, all the way up to probably 170.
In USD? Because a lot of people are around the world. So I just wanted to give a USD. Okay,
yes.
Awesome.
Apologies. Yes. I'm just talking USD. And again, these are very, very vague answers here. Like, would be happy to answer one off and feel free to add me on LinkedIn. But like, 140 to let's say like 175 for a mid-level position, probably, I've placed CCOs anywhere from 225 all the way up to 400, 425. So that's where it gets a little bit sticky. And that's where I think it really depends on the company itself and where they are, where they're at.
Awesome.
I think typically for a BSA AML officer could probably be anywhere from 200 to 300. Again, depends on where the company's at. I know that wasn't super specific or helpful.
I think it's helpful because when you know what the averages of a lot of traditional companies are between 65 and 85, you see with a little bit of experience in crypto, you see the potential for those that are not in crypto yet or that may have been let go. It's like you really just need that experience. And for those that don't want to take a pay cut to get into crypto, I think Gretchen just really identified something very good, is that you see with an experience in crypto, although you might start lower than your current traditional salary, the opportunities and the compensation once you get 2 years of experience are almost double the salary that many of you would get if you stayed in that traditional job for 2 or 3 years. So you have to be very strategic in crypto. And yes, I know you have a mortgage. Yes, you just bought this and a car and that, but that's life. I think people are going to have to either reduce their cost of living, to be quite honest. I have a fancy lifestyle, to be quite honest. So I'm definitely understanding if you want to drive a BMW and a Range Rover and have a big house, but don't complain when, the recruiters ask you to take 20,000 less to get into crypto. You have to be able to kind of sacrifice something. If 5 years from now, when you have crypto experience, you get to ask for ridiculous amounts of money, like I did to Elizabeth last year.
Elizabeth. Steven, going off what you said really quick. I have people who come from banks, come to me almost every day, and they say, I want to get into crypto. I say, okay, great. We talk about a role. And then they're like, okay, well, I'd want 300 on the base. Well, guess what? They want crypto experience or at least fintech experience. Forget about the crypto. They want you to be working in a fintech for a couple years. 6 months is not enough, even if you do have 6 months. So you have to be prepared to take a pay cut oftentimes, no matter what series the company is at. because that fintech experience really is invaluable and really puts you into the same pot as a lot of these other people who might have already had it.
A pay cut and sometimes a title cut. Like people are so wrapped up with their traditional titles. Like you guys got to get over that, to be quite honest. Because in crypto, you get to make up your own title after a couple of years. Elizabeth, there was a couple questions. One, what do you think about people that are job jumping before they get a role? They're coming to you. They have like 3 years of experience, but it's at 3 different companies. And as a job jumper yourself, what are your thoughts on that? And then I'll go to Gretchen. And we'll probably extend another 10, 15 minutes. If you guys have to jump off, don't worry, conversation's recorded. But for you that are staying on, you're getting some really good juice here at the end of this session. Elizabeth, what happens with job jumpers in your point of view?
So Steven, this is a very hot topic because every recruiter has their own perspective about that. Sometimes I argue on LinkedIn with many other talent acquisition about this topic. To be honest, I don't judge anyone because you never know what is behind this job hopping. To me personally, happened all the time that I got headhunted by the next company. And if you see that this company is offering you, I don't know, double the money, a leading position, to build from scratch a team, to do something that you have never done before, to use technology that you have never used before, somehow it's a bit difficult to say, hey, no, I'm sorry, I have to be in my company because I have to be loyal, otherwise the next talent acquisition will judge me. So what I will say is it really depends candidate by candidate. We cannot judge every situation in the same manner. It can happen even that a candidate had some health issues, that it was in a very toxic environment and had to jump to another job to feel better. You never know what is behind. A CV is a story. So I will never judge a candidate because it changed, 4 companies in 4 years. I will just ask the reason, just for me to understand what's happening. And on the other side, I would appreciate the fact that the candidate is gaining much more knowledge than what maybe another candidate that have been 10 years with a company has done, because maybe hasn't seen so many technologies like the other candidate, hasn't, met so many different teams like the other candidate, and so on. It has its pros and cons. It really depends. But from my perspective, I wouldn't judge.
I love it. And, I told my wife last year to quit her job because it was, high pay, but like, it was just too stressful. And I was like, who cares what it looks like on your resume? Gretchen, I saw you like in like big bold letters put in pretty much like what does this deal with titles? I think you've probably seen what the traditional recruitment space looked like. I see people killing themselves for a job they don't even really like just to get a title so that they can continue killing themselves. And this title is based on someone that's subjective, that's saying, hey, I don't know if you're manager material, when half of these positions or 90% of these positions have managers and no leadership. Give you the juice on it. It's the truth though, right? Like they have all these managers. The managers are good in the bank, but they leave that bank. It doesn't mean shit. So tell us about titles, and should people be working towards titles? And I know, hey, titles are important, but just like people say money isn't everything, but it's important. Can we say the same thing about titles? Is titles everything? Not everything, but it's still important. What are your thoughts?
So coming from, sorry, was this to me or Elizabeth?
It was to you. Don't worry. We're going to let Elizabeth is dying to answer as well. So we'll let her go after you.
Totally. Yeah. So in terms of titles, I've coming from the position, I've had a candidate completely reject one offer I got him because the title wasn't what he wanted it to be. And to me, that is very telling about that individual. If the title is what you want to show people externally, yet the experience could have been so much greater had you have taken the role. In terms of title, it's so interesting in the fintech and crypto space, because in traditional finance, you have analyst, associate, AVP, VP, SVP, director, executive director, managing director, right? Here, Fireblocks, for example, they don't have a chief compliance officer. They have VPs of compliance and legal, VP of sales. Kraken, they have a chief compliance officer. Yet the type Genesis, very high position, you're considered a VP at Genesis once upon a time. So the title really depends on the firm, and what means a VP at one firm, which is the top dog, could mean middleman at another firm. And so really the title is completely irrelevant. I think it's the quality of the role that you should be chasing after, in my opinion.
I love that. Elizabeth, any of the insights there? You seem like you're getting, you had to even like go off camera to get a drink of water. You're getting so heated about titles. You want to talk about titles quickly?
I fully agree with Gretchen, honestly. Sometimes titles don't mean anything, and mostly in the crypto space really don't mean anything. I got in touch with many people, I mean, in the compliance space and even in the tech space, and maybe in the tech space that had the title of Chief Technology Officer, that is the highest title, and then in the end they were a normal developer that was developing among the team. Same thing for compliance people, you know, compliance manager on paper, and then in the end they never led a team. So to be honest with you, it's more a matter of what the company wants. I realized that sometimes the hiring managers are easily impressed by some job title. They say, oh my God, this guy is a manager, this guy is an officer, this guy is this guy is that. And then they want absolutely to interview this person, and then they get disappointed because they realize that in the end, the title is not exactly what's the experience. So I totally agree with Gretchen. It completely depends on the firm. It completely depends on the type of role that you're covering. Job title don't mean anything at all. So guys, don't worry about that.
Awesome. And if you work for certain banks, trust me, the recruiters know the BS titles too. So don't be and they know which ones are BS titles versus which ones are decent titles. Stephanie's going to ask some questions. I think there was a really good question from due diligence. But Stephanie, go ahead with the question.
Sure. I have a question. Hi, team. Regarding compensation for a candidate role from a non-UK North America with potential remote position, how should that be taken into account in terms of requested salary range?
So like jurisdiction, remoteness, I think is important, right? For me, I'm not taking any role I have to go into the office for, versus some companies here in Canada want you to come into the office for 3 days, just so you can breathe the COVID on the rail system. You can just breathe it in. What are your thoughts, Gretchen?
Stephanie, can you repeat the question again really quick? I'm just trying to fully digest it.
Sure, I just lost it. Give me 1 second.
Sorry about that.
Okay.
Unless Elizabeth, unless you want to go first.
I have it here. Regarding compensation for a candidate from non-UK or not in North America, not in the UK, with potential for remoteness, how should that be taken into account in terms of requesting salary range? So a lot of people here are in different countries, Africa, continents. What are your thoughts? Like, how should they be approaching compensation, knowing that their cost of living might be different, especially if it's going to be a fully remote role? Should they be asking for similar compensation that you're talking about in the US, or should they be budgeting down a little to try and make themselves more attractive for the role? I'm not sure if that's the exact question, but that's the way I would ask it.
Well, I think there's one thing, and speaking very generally here, typically, not all the time, but typically, the compensation packages kind of go as follows. Those in EMEA are not paid as high as their counterparts in APAC, who are not paid as high as their counterparts in the US. The US is typically top dollar. Truthfully, I have never placed someone who lived in Africa, so I might not be the best person to speak to about this specific question for someone who's not in EMEA or America. However, I have placed people in like APAC and other areas. But so I would approach it by, one, talking to a recruiter, two, looking at similar jobs online to see what those compensation packages are offering so that you can remain competitive in that position, regardless of if it's remote or not. Elizabeth, I think maybe you might be a little bit more well suited to answer this one.
Yes, so I've been recruiting a bit from everywhere. So APAC, Africa, Canada, US. To be honest with you guys, I've seen companies being a bit greedy with people that were outside of US. And this is pretty unfair just because, as Gretchen was mentioned before, for example, people that are in the EMEA region, like me, we are valued a bit lower than people that are coming from US. It's not very fair. What I will say, as Gretchen suggested, it is always to search for the role that you want to apply to, that you are discussing with along the process, and to see what is the average compensation. If we are talking about a US company, I will say, even though you are in Africa, even though you are in APAC, even though you are in EMEA, doesn't matter. Just look at what the company is offering to US candidates, and then do your calculation. I understand, that the cost of living in US is much higher than Europe. I mean, sometimes, not always, to be honest. Europe as well is expensive lately. But I see company being pretty unfair with candidates that are outside of US. And I will say, as a candidate, fight this. Because you are worth it all the money, doesn't matter which country you are from. So make your own research, support your salary expectation, and if you're worth it all the money, just demand for it. That's my suggestion.
Where do you find that information? Because I used to use AngelList because I felt like if you could find a similar role, AngelList, I think it's called WellFound or something else now, but they used to post salaries. So you could get a good idea about salaries, especially when the actual job is not posting the specific salary. Gretchen, you have to jump in a few minutes. I know we went long here anyway, so feel free to jump off anytime. But can you see, like, where should candidates be looking to figure out salary, or what are your thoughts about roles being posted without salary? Is that common for your practice? What are your thoughts there? Because people argue that all day on LinkedIn, that clients should be posting the salary, or recruiters should be posting salary.
I have mixed feelings about it. Like, overall, I'm quite supportive of salaries being posted for roles, but I have mixed feelings about it because, it's not uncommon for, let's say theoretically a role is offering 200 to 250 on the base, and they want and again, I'm making this up, 6 to 10 years of experience. Well, the person with 10 years of experience that I just spoke to, they're worth $250,000. They've been working for 10 years, maybe even 12, more than qualified for the position. And then I'll talk to someone who's maybe 5 or 6 years of experience. And the problem is that as soon as you tell them the range, they're like, well, I want 250. Once they get that high number in their head, they automatically, that's what they want, which I understand. I would be in the same exact position. I would want the most that I can possibly get as well. But by doing that, you actually price yourself out because, okay, the role is requiring 6 to 10 years of experience. Why would they give a 6-year experienced person $250,000 when they could give a 10-year of experienced person $250,000?
It messes with their mental too, because now they're like, if they don't get that
Now
top end, now they're bummy in the interview stage, right? They're mad if they don't get the top end, even though 10 minutes ago, before you discussed salary, they wouldn't even have applied because they thought they weren't qualified for the role. And now that it's and I think it plays off in the interview too. And that's the only reason I bring it up, because I see people in the interview, when they think that they should be getting at the top end, they actually play themselves into thinking that they're worth it. And they might be, but their skills aren't saying that they're worth it.
100%. They end up actually, it's a detriment to their candidacy, by pricing yourself too high. I've seen it time and time again. Or, I've seen job postings for that kind of role anywhere from 250 to 300. Why is this role only offering 220 to 275? And it's like, well, you wouldn't be getting 275. You wouldn't be getting 300 even if it was offering 300, because you have less years of experience. And so it's definitely, that's where it gets a little touchy. But overall, I do think that salary ranges should be posted. I think that is the way that people are treated equally, despite any kind of demographic that they're from. And so, as tough as it can be to manage expectations, I am still pro putting the salary range out there.
Awesome. And last question from our airdrop partner at Due Diligence Advisory Africa. Elizabeth, I'll go to you. This company is offering education to their professionals who are consultants. They're focusing on getting them certified, chain analysis certifications provided by airdrop. They're career coaches. They're bringing in industry experts every Monday to help their professionals. What else can they do to add value to them? So you've dealt with a lot of clients. What else could this company do to add value to their consultancies? What are your thoughts there? That's a very interesting question.
Yes, it is. Can you repeat the services that they are offering at the moment?
So they're a compliance consultancy, but what they have been doing for their professionals is paying for them to get educated, bringing in industry experts for webinars. They focus on education and professional and personal development. They're wondering what more can they do to be a full service company to help their candidates more.
What I will say would be interesting, for example, to create a session where candidates can meet directly experts and can ask them, I don't know, for example, specific technical question that they couldn't ask on the job or maybe in a common session. And
sorry, I should have said candidates. What should they do for their consultants? Sorry, they're not looking for, what can they do better for their employees?
To be honest, I think they are doing everything right.
That's what I was going to say. Gretchen.
I don't know if they are working all of them fully remotely or how it is the setup, but something that they could do is to offer that, to offer, for example, unlimited PTO. There is always sometimes, a doubt about this unlimited PTO topic. To be honest with you, I've seen companies offering that and seeing the employees retaining going up like crazy, just because companies think, if we give too much time off, people will not work. It's not true. People will value the company much more than companies that are giving 20 days, 15 days. They will work even double. So what I would suggest in terms of retention, it's to give some benefits like this, like fully remote, unlimited PTO, home office allowance, as I mentioned before, this type of benefits. But for the rest, I think that they are doing everything right.
I love it. Gretchen, you have the last thought here. What do you think about unlimited PTO? Some people just need a fucking mental health day sometimes and just be like, yo, the kids are bothering me. Pets are going to the vet. I need a day off. What are your thoughts around that?
Yeah, so I think unlimited PTO is fantastic in practice or in idea form, but I've actually read a study that said that people who have unlimited PTO actually take less PTO than if they had a set amount of days. Because if you have a set amount of, let's say, 25 days, when it comes towards the end of the year, let's say those days aren't going to roll over, you're like, oh shoot, I have to use all of my PTO. So you want to get those, right? You want to take them. Whereas with unlimited PTO, let's say I don't have a good relationship with my manager, I might, oh shoot, am I allowed to take PTO even though I have unlimited? But what about what my manager says? Whereas if you have a set amount of days, you are entitled to that set amount of days. There's no arguing it, right? So I don't know. That's a study I read recently that people who have unlimited PTO actually end up taking less days than, companies that have a set amount of generous days, right? Do I think that there's different programs or different things that could be implemented? Like you get 5 mental health days every, X amount of time. Absolutely. That would be incredible, right? But I think also at the same time, with where the market is from a fintech and crypto perspective, it might not be totally possible to give employees, hey, here's your stipend for your work from home office. Here's your stipend for transportation. Here's your stipend for this or that, blah, 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 blah. It's completely impossible to have absolutely top pay, yet also absolutely top enhancements of benefits as well, in my experience or my opinion. So I think, yeah, that's my opinion. If they could give different options or different packages, that would be awesome. So the person can at least choose, okay, am I expecting to take 15 days? Am I expecting to take 30 days? Which have you? But that would also be a dream world. So we'll see. But
I love the a la carte option. Gretchen, I know you have to jump. Everyone, thank you so much, Gretchen. Thank you so much, Lama, who's not with us, and Elizabetta. Thank you, Stephanie, Ash, who I know left. Thank you all for making this so great. I forgot to actually spotlight the speakers, which is going to suck for the recording, but I'll do better next time. This is what happens when I'm in charge of doing administrative stuff versus Ash being in charge. Thank you, everyone, for staying on this session for so long. You'll get a recording probably in the next couple of days. But I think this is the best insights I've heard in the industry where you can get real conversations. Stay tuned 2 weeks from now. We have some friends from some very important companies that are hiring, still hiring. So I think you'll want to join that session and get in front of their recruiters as well. If there's some questions about certifications, we are starting our Chainalysis Reactor course, which is blockchain investigations, on Saturday. Deadline to apply or deadline to register is tomorrow at about noon Eastern time. So if you are thinking about applying, reach out to me. If it's a situation around financial situation, reach out to me. I'm trying to do my best to help everyone during this market. But thank you so much to the panelists. You guys were absolutely awesome. And we have like hours and hours of really great content to clip from this.
Thank you so much, guys, for joining. It was great. It was a good time and awesome meeting everyone.
Thanks, Elizabeth. I know like Arminek's sitting there like dying to go out for his birthday dinner. I know a couple times you're like rolling your eyes. He's probably like, yo, I'm hungry. I forgot it's so late for you there. So enjoy a birthday dinner and tell Arminek we said hi.
And for having me. Bye.
Thanks,
guys.
everyone. Take care. Bye.